evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We, as Diana indicated, have had many wonderful guests as part of this program, senators and cabinet secretaries and bishops. I have never been as excited to welcome anybody to the program as I am tonight to welcome Sister Simone Campbell. I am a big fan of hers.
Sweet, thank you.
She is a wonderful person, has a wonderful life story to tell, has written a wonderful book about it. And what I admire so much is that without being elected to anything or holding any official position, she has proven that one person can still really make a difference in public policy today and in changing the conversation and changing the direction of public policy in this country. And I find that very exciting and very refreshing, and I am very grateful, Sister, for your leadership on so many issues. Yes. So, by the way, the real purpose of tonight is not to hear from Sister Simone Campbell, nor to sell books. It's to get her more Twitter followers. Okay?
True.
So we need to know, you are, what is the goal now, Sister?
Well, I've had this goal of breaking 10,000 followers, and I'm 172 short. So we could make a dent. And my Twitter handle, if you're into tweeting, I used to call them twits, but now I'm totally into it.
No.
But my Twitter handle is SR_Simone, S-I-M-O-N-E. So every little bit helps.
The people who tweet are twits. No, but,
oh, I hope not. I've changed my thought on
Oh,
this.
yeah, good. No, you can, so everybody has got to help just to tweet everybody you know and tell them to sign up, and we'll see if we can break that. Well, Sister, I want to start with your story before the bus, or a nun on the bus, but back to 1972, I was really surprised to read in your book, it was in think about that, 1972, that the network formed a lobby. These are Catholic nuns who came to Washington and signed up as lobbyists and formed a lobby. Talk about revolutionary move, particularly at that time. Why did you do it, and what issues were the sisters lobbying?
Well, I was in California as a very young sister, so I didn't get to go to that meeting. But having talked to a lot of folks who were there, 47 Catholic sisters came together and they said, we've been doing this charity, but you know, we keep doing charity and we're not changing the structures. And at that point, our bishops had issued a pastoral encouraging everyone to get involved, not only in charity, but also in the work for justice, in structural change. So they said, well, we need to engage in this quest for structural change to end the causes of some of the poverty. And so they said, we don't need a new organization. What we need is a network of all of us around the country in order to impact Congress. And that was in December, actually, of 71. April of 72, we opened the doors for the first time. And we had 2 lobbyists who registered on the Hill as lobbyists and began the process of lobbying.
And they were arriving at legislators' offices, I would imagine, without big campaign contributions.
Yes,
so,
yes.
How were they received? And
well, it was really interesting talking to some of our early founders that they were received very well, but sort of in a condescending manner. Oh, sister, how sweet that you would come. How lovely. Thank you very much, sister. But they wanted to talk about things about nuclear arms and ending the arms race and breaking down poverty and engaging all these things. So as I understand it, very quickly it became noted that they were quite well educated, quite articulate, and not at all to be patted on the head if anyone wanted to protect their hands. So very quickly they became a force.
so you had a presence in Washington since that time.
Yep.
On a lot of these very important issues. And you were working on social justice and poverty and all of the issues that we might say, if one reads the Gospels, Christians should be about. And then I want to flash forward to April 18, 2012.
Yes.
Suddenly you hear from the Vatican.
The day that will live in infamy.
And the Vatican's not happy with what you're doing. Why?
Right, but you really need to go 4 days before that.
Oh, okay.
To see the whole movement.
April 14,
April
2012.
14, 2012. Network celebrated its 40th anniversary, and we had this glorious glorious party up at Trinity University. And the big question was, how do we let people know we've been working on the Hill for 40 years? How do we get the word out that we've been working for this social justice? How do we let people be a part of our movement?
I guess the Vatican did it for you, right?
4 days later, the Vatican answered our prayer. So you have to be really careful what you pray for.
Now, for starters, you say, this was what came down from on high. You had made public statements that disagree with or challenge the bishops who are the church's authentic teachers of faith and morals.
We're the fakes.
On top of that, there was a prevalence of certain radical feminist themes incompatible with the Catholic faith, and even worse, you were promoting issues of social justice, but you were silent on the right to life from conception to natural death. You were talking too much about poverty and not enough about abortion. Shame.
I know. Isn't that a badge of honor that somebody says you're doing your mission too intensely? It's fabulous. It was painful. I joke about everything, as you'll find out, but it was extremely painful. It was shocking. Sure. It was horrifying. But very quickly, I knew really the whole censure for network. I mean, we only had 9 full-time staff at that time. So 9 full-time staff made the Vatican nervous. But what it was really about was politics, because what we had done was I wrote what's called the Nuns letter for the Affordable Care Act, and 59 Catholic sisters signed it, and we went public. Now, that would have been fine, except we went public after our bishops' conference went public opposing the Affordable Care Act. So we went public in support of it. So while our bishops are the true teachers of faith and morals, they're not the true teachers of politics, because politics is where you read a law and you see what it says. And our bishops were given bad advice, in my opinion, and therefore we came out in favor of the Affordable Care Act. The bishops were told that there was federal funding for abortion in the Affordable Care Act. And my astute political analysis was, liar, liar, pants on fire. So the fact is, 2 federal courts now have found as a matter of law, that means there's no doubt about it, there is no federal funding of abortion in the Affordable Care Act. And the bishops really were given wrong information. And how did I know that? I read the bill. And so it's a big, long, complicated bill, but I read it and understood it. And therefore, we took a different position. So that, as one of the signers of our letter said, what happened, Simone, was the girls played the boys, and for once, the girls won. And that is what rankles. That is what still rankles as a piece of this reality.
Well, that's a question I wanted to ask you. Wasn't this really a classic case of the boys versus the girls, in terms of the history of the church and the role of men versus women in the church? I mean, all played out here, didn't it?
That's a really good point. I hadn't quite thought of it as a meta story, but I think you're kind of right in that, Bill, because the role of Catholic sisters is to be with those at the margins of society. We take the gospel to where it wouldn't be otherwise. And so lobby on Capitol Hill, we work in soup kitchens, we're with people, we do home visiting, we do all kinds of stuff to be with people. And the role of our leadership is to protect the institution, to care for the organizational issues. And so we both have very different visions of where the gospel needs to go and what fidelity is about. And it's that tension between our lived experience and their lived experience that creates periodically these little explosions of opportunity.
Do you think the American bishops who, as you point out, oppose the Affordable Care Act and oppose same-sex marriage and on and on and on the issues, not usually, we don't hear from them usually on the issues that the sisters are talking about. Do you think the American bishops stirred up the Vatican to investigate?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's all kinds of reporting on that. It was the American cardinals in Rome who precipitated this investigation. They have been upset with our political orientation for a very long period of time. Then there was competition between two different offices in Rome. And actually this fall, the office that has not yet issued their report, the Congregation of Religious, is supposed to issue a report in the fall from the visitation that also went on. They started a visitation, then the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, who was headed by an American, kind of had, I think they got involved in a turf fight. So they said, we're going to do a doctrinal assessment. So that was the doctrinal assessment's been out. This other one hasn't been out. We don't know what's going to be the results, so stay tuned.
All right, so let's flash forward another few months. You're talking about how are we going to respond to this? How are we going to get the message about who we really are and what we're all about? June 17, you arrive in Des Moines, Iowa, Nuns on the bus. Whose idea was it?
Good question. We don't know. But this for me is all about, okay, I'm spiritual, so I believe in the Holy Spirit. My community is dedicated to the Holy Spirit. And for me, the sign of the Spirit is that in this city, where everyone wants to claim credit for a successful idea, something that works, no one who was in our May 14th meeting remembers who first said road trip. But by the end of an hour and a half meeting, we were going on the road, we were pushing back against the Ryan budget, we were lifting up the works of Catholic sisters, and we were going in a wrapped bus. I had no idea what a wrapped bus was. I didn't know what it was, but I knew where the mother houses, the central houses for Catholic sisters are, because they're big enough and we could get free nights to stay overnight. So I had a map in my head, partially because I knew congressional districts and partially because I knew where we could get free lodging. Yeah. So that was it.
People had the impression that you were driving around in this luxurious bus, yes, jammed with all of these nuns living the high life, right?
Yeah,
what was it really like?
Right.
What was it really like?
Oh, my glory. Things to tell. Okay, first of all, it did have what they called lounge seating. At first, I thought I could have 40 nuns and on the bus, and they said, no, there's only 10 seats. What? 10 seats? Is this thing a van? What is it? No, it's a big bus. But they call it either a campaign bus or a rock band bus. And so the bus we had the first time was sort of a bit of a rattle trap, but it had room for 10 seats, but we had a driver and a second driver and a staff person and a press person. So that took 4 seats right there. So that left me with 6. Then we had press. We had press like you wouldn't believe. So when we started off, I was just down to 4 sisters because we didn't have enough room. And what happened was then we would rotate. 2 of us did the whole trip, and then we would rotate people through to get as many people on the bus as possible. And then also sisters came to our events, and we went to their places. We stayed overnight with them. But here's some inside stuff that I didn't put in the book either, I don't think. Things like you got very intimate in community because we had a toilet, but it only accepted liquid. And so if you needed anything else, you had to announce to the whole bus, please, could we have a regular pit stop? That sort of broke
Number
down.
2.
Exactly. Though we said it a little more delicately than that, but everybody knew, so we tried to get our rhythms in order. What else happened? We had this thing where we didn't drink any alcohol or beer or wine or anything like that during the day. But afterwards, when we were staying with sisters, we would bring wine and beer, and we would do what it became called tradition. So every night we would do a friend raiser, quite like this, where you just gather and tell stories and ask questions and talk. And if somebody was, which was usually me, hanging around too long talking to people afterwards, our sisters would come and kind of pull at my sleeve and say, tradition, Simone. It's time for tradition. And then we would go to whoever we were staying with, and bring wine, and they usually had some snacks, and we'd sit around and tell stories from the bus and talk about the struggles of being involved. And
now I want to get to the substance of the bus for just a second, but Did you really have Elvis as a driver?
Yes. Bill, our driver on both trips, drove Elvis's last trip and last tour. And so we kept trying to get stories out of him. And Bill would say, I'm not talking about your girls' trip. I'm not talking about his. What happens on the bus stays on the bus.
So the focus of the tour was the Paul Ryan budget,
Right.
which you felt made such drastic, which did
Oh, it was
make
wrong.
such drastic cuts to so many social programs. And this is Paul Ryan, who's a Catholic, devout Catholic, who said his so-called devout Catholic, right, by someone's definition. But he claimed that his budget was based on Catholic social teaching.
Right. Well, the reason I just made this face is because I was just doing a NPR interview for Iowa Public Radio, and they played a clip of me saying, if Paul Ryan had never said that his Catholic social teaching informed his budget, I don't think we would have been on the road. That made me mad. But it really did, because it's the antithesis of what our Catholic social teaching is about. And the glorious thing is Pope Francis has made this abundantly clear, that the role of government is to make sure that those most marginalized are protected in the protection of the common good. And the very point Paul Ryan keeps making is about subsidiarity, where everyone takes care of themselves. That makes no sense unless you have a strong sense of community, and he doesn't have much of a sense of community when it comes for our shared responsibility for each other.
Did you ever confront him? You went to his
yes.
district office.
Oh, we went to his district office. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
We went to his district office and met with the staff. And I was worried about going to Janesville because I expected all the Paul Ryan supporters to be there and we'd have all of this dissent. Well, we didn't. We had like 350 supporters of us. And they were in this hallway singing, and doing, it was just an amazing experience. So in that meeting, though, I asked to get a meeting with the congressman. And actually on the bus, when we were on the bus after maybe about a week after we had met in Janesville, his office reached out to set up a meeting with me. But I didn't trust him, quite frankly. And so I didn't talk about it till the meeting actually occurred. And so I had a meeting then. I testified in front of him in the budget committee last July. And then I had a meeting with him a couple of weeks ago. So we've had a chance to talk about these issues.
You have, yeah.
Yes.
Now, I want to flash forward to the next big time you're on stage is August 2012, Charlotte, North Carolina, the Democratic National Convention. The night before President Obama accepts renomination, you dominate the stage. Yeah. What was that like?
That was amazing.
And I love the advice that the guy gave you. I have to tell people just before you went out.
Sure. First of all, the Democrats did a great job preparing us because I had never worked with a teleprompter. So we got 2 chances to practice. And at the practice were 2 speech writers and a speech coach and the teleprompter person. So they helped improve. But I'd already had a wrestling match with some of the speech writers.
I was going to say, did they let you say whatever you wanted to say, or did they censor your speech?
They let me say pretty much what I wanted to say. I told them I'd speak on 3, if I could do 3 things. Lift up the folks we'd met on the bus, the needs of those at the margins, that I could say I was pro-life, and that we had a big tent, all were welcome on the bus. And they very quickly agreed to that. So then I thought, I should have added some more stuff, but I didn't. But then I sent in a draft. Okay, all this happened like in 10 days' time. So I sent in a draft speech, and they sent it back, and it was a political speech. And I said, wait a minute, I'm not giving a political speech. My value to this is to lift up the needs of people at the margins. They said, we didn't mean to offend. So they let me do my speech, which was really good, because otherwise I wouldn't have done it. But the thing that they did was they had all of these stages under all these steps.
rooms, sort of.
Well, practice rooms, but then once you're up on the podium behind the scenes,
Yeah.
they had people where you waited, and I kept getting hugged and kissed, and people wanting their pictures with me. It was sort of sweet. And so, and the governor of Delaware comes up and says, "Oh, I hear I'm going to follow you, and I hear you're a tough act to follow." And I say, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's fine." Anyway, but then the next to last stage is makeup repair. And I needed a lot of makeup repair because I'd been hugging all these people. I wasn't used to air kissing. Now I understand why you're supposed to air kiss, so you keep your makeup fine. Though you probably don't have that problem. But then you get to the last place, and Governor Hickenlooper from Colorado was talking, and this really tall guy who was like the director of the evening was so nice. He took me out behind the press so I could see it, and he says, "Look out at the house." And so I look out at the house, and he says, "Now, just own it. Just own it when you go out there." And then he invites me back, and he says, "Okay," he asked me some questions. "I want to see, do you need water? Are you okay? How are you doing?" And he was just really a calm presence. And then he said, "All right, now just take a couple of deep breaths." And so I said, "Well, that's easy. I do Zen." So he said, "Oh, just center. That's great." And then he says, "Okay, I'm going to put my hand on your shoulder. And when it's time to go, I'm just going to give you a little push. And just don't look back. Just go out there and own the house. Just own the house."
And you did.
I did.
Yeah, it was great. Absolutely. You talked a little bit about Pope Francis. I mean, it seems to me, when I first heard Pope Francis speak about poverty, I thought, the nuns won. I mean, all the way to the top. I mean, and
we still have a middle management problem.
Well, yeah, that's right. We'll just leap over that, though, But he is saying all the things that you and the nuns on the bus were saying. And one quote in your book here about the church, or the Pope, rather, saying, because there was so much infighting among the bishops and the cardinals in the Curia, you talk about that. And the Pope said, "I prefer a church that messes up for doing something than one that's sick for remaining closed inside itself."
Amen.
Yeah, right? That's what it's all about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And he's making it so clear. Now, what was really interesting to me is on the second bus trip, which was on immigration reform. Okay, the first bus trip, we were in one parish in Des Moines, outside of Des Moines, and then we weren't allowed on most other church property. We did it we were at the Unitarians or the UCC or the Episcopalians or just about everybody else, or the convents. And but on the second trip, 5 different bishops came to different events. So that was a sign of the liberating influence of Pope Francis, that I think one of the biggest things is that he's lifting the fear that our leadership has had about being reported to Rome. And I mean, it's really bad. I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff in the what's been going on, but because of Pope Francis' leadership, 5 bishops came out. And the first night, I'll never forget, was outside of Trenton. And Bishop O'Connell comes, and he wanted to have his picture taken with me. And that was really dear to me because most bishops run the other way when I'm around. So it was very sweet. It was, and I think it's all because of Pope Francis.
Mm-hmm. Which leads me to, and just maybe another 5 or so, and then we'll open it up, and I know you have lots of questions for Sister, but leads me to, I want to quote just the first paragraph from a recent article in the New York Times. "They are rethinking what kinds of houses they live in and what kinds of cars they drive. They are wondering whether, in anticipation of the 2016 presidential election, they need to rewrite their advice to parishioners to make sure that poverty and not just abortion is discussed as a high priority issue, and they are trying to get better about returning phone calls, reaching out to the disenchanted and the disenfranchised, and showing up at events." And that article is about the latest meeting of the American Catholic bishops in New Orleans. Whoa, what a sea change.
Right, but that was only, okay, I shouldn't complain. They did it. They talked like that for about an hour and a half.
I was going to have.
And then
have you seen
they,
the change?
No, not yet. But there's a real worry. There is a real worry that the polarization that exists in our nation will also be with the bishops, and there's a real question about whether or not they're going to be able to even do that. And
because some bishops resist it. Is that?
Oh yes, some bishops resisted tremendously because they see their role much more akin to supporting a politics that is not inclusive of the most left out, who believe that the economy and having this horrible income and wealth disparity is a good thing for our nation. And I don't understand it. I try to understand it so I can lobby against it. But there is a real question about their capacity to come together as an organization.
They identify with the 1%.
Or the 0.1%. And part of it goes to what they need to run a diocese and their institutions and what matters. So you can kind of understand that. But for me, in the face of what Jesus says, what the gospel's really about, I think they missed the mark on that. But it'll be good if they can do it.
Should and when will women be allowed to be priests in the Catholic Church?
Women will. Just what millennium, it's hard to know. But actually, I mean, you know that there are some women priests now that are validly ordained, but we have all these technicalities. I'm a lawyer, so I sort of enjoy the technicalities. Validly ordained, but illicit, meaning that they didn't follow all the regulations. But in my book, one of the things I talk about is that I think we've had too narrow of a view of ordination. And for those of you within the Catholic tradition, I really felt when I was the leader of my religious community that I was ordained by my sisters to be a priestly minister to them. I heard confessions. I anointed the sick. I was with my sisters in struggle, certainly led prayer and Eucharist in very wonderful ways. So one of the things I think we need to do as a people is open our eyes to folks doing priestly ministry in a variety of settings. And if we open our eyes, it's happening already. And leadership who sees themselves as having to hold the line will never see these emerging ways. And so we, the people, yet again, need to help.
Do you think it could happen under this Pope?
Probably not. What is happening, though, is more leadership roles. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, the Pope, for the first time, appointed a commission where it's 4 men, 4 women, and the women have equal power with the men. I mean, it's glacially slow, but it's happening. But then you have to figure any crowd that took 350 years to figure out Galileo might be right is not noted for rapid change. But here's this, because a lot of people say to me, well, how can you stay in such a strange, backwards? You seem not too backwards, so how do you stay? Here's the deal. It's so much more than the leadership, because the faith life, the spiritual life that I have learned through my tradition is profoundly sacred and frees me to do this work unafraid. And it requires deep roots into history and the traditions of the mystics and contemplatives. And to walk unafraid, kind of a strange road, is a challenge. And so having my roots deep in that tradition is nourishing.
What some of you may not know is that Sister Simone Campbell is not only a great spiritual leader and a stand-up comic and a very inspiring speaker, she's also a poet. And there's a lot of your original poetry in the book, Sister. Could you just close this part of the program by maybe reading one of them for us?
Sure.
I love this Loaves and Fish.
Oh.
The Loaves and Fishes. Huh? Is that... Or you can pick any one you want.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, I love this one. Because this comes from the bus and comes from feeling overwhelmed. But the only thing you have to know is you have to know the reference. In the Christian scriptures, there's in each of the Gospels is the story of Jesus. The apostles come into Jesus complaining that the crowd is getting grouchy. There's no food. Send them back to town. It's going to be bad news. Just get them out of here. And Jesus says to the apostles, feed them yourselves. And the apostle, well, we don't have anything. We don't have anything. And then the story goes that all they had were these five loaves and 2 pretty smelly fish. And so Jesus blesses it, and they give it out. And the story is that it was multiplied, and it was a miracle. Well, and then at the end of Matthew's section, way Matthew tells it, it says 5,000 men were fed, to say nothing of the women and children. Well, that made me mad. So I sort of meditated on it, and what I realized was, well, here's my interpretation of that. They only counted the ones who thought it was a miracle, because the women had brought snacks from home, and the women knew that they had food to but sharing was the miracle. And so that you just need to understand that. Okay. So here's the poem. I always joked that the miracle of loaves and fish was sharing. The women always knew this. But in this moment of need and notoriety, I ache, tremble, almost weep at folks so hungry, malnourished, faced with spiritual famine of epic proportions. My heart aches with their need. Apostle-like, I whine. What are we among so many? The consistent 2,000-year-old ever-new response is this. Blessed and broken, you are enough. I savor the blessed, cower at the broken, and pray to be enough. Thank you.
Sister Simone Campbell, thank you so much for being here this evening. And now we will hear from our friends here this evening. So just raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you. There we go. And please wait again till the microphone is in your hands and go. Yes. Hi.
Sister, you're a rock star.
Thanks. As long as I don't sing, that's fine.
So what are your plans between now and the general election in 2016?
Good question. Good question. We've got 2014 to get over first. And we're looking at maybe doing some bus work in some key states, looking at a Senate strategy. Now, the irony is what we want to do is we want to get we the people to stand up against big money. I mean, that's what we want to do. And this income and economic disparity is a real problem. So that's what we want to do. But the irony, here's the irony. I have to raise big money so we can go out on the bus so we can push back against we the people and big money. So that's what we're looking at now. We'll see how that works out. Because we do lobby on the Hill, because we're really pragmatic, a lot will depend on what happens in the election in 2014. Additionally, we do education around the country, and we've been working really hard on educating people about the income and wealth disparity in our nation. And then that there are things that can be done about it. Policies have created this reality, and there are things we can do to change it. And so we've got what we call Mind the Gap, and we call Mend the Gap. And mending the gap is our effort to raise 4 specific policies that include taxes, wages and labor, labor organizing, housing policy, and asset development, so that low-income people have enough to be able to save. It makes all the difference in the world to families. And we have out there our great display. Coralie was holding up, so I remember. We have our display, and one of our staff, Ashley Wilson, back there, who's live tweeting, is... thank you.
Are we over 10,000 yet?
No. Getting there.
We're working on it.
So those are the kinds of things that our organization work on. And the way we describe ourselves, we're no longer the Nuns lobby, just the Nuns lobby. It was really funny. Ted Kennedy and Senator Dodd and a whole bunch of the old timers calls us the Nuns lobby, no matter what we told them. But which was nice. But The way we describe ourselves now is that we're rooted in Catholic social teaching, which emphasizes the dignity of all and justice and solidarity, the kinds of things I've been talking about. But we're open to all who share our passion. So all are welcome to join us in this project. So it's cool. Thank you for the question.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Sister Simone, thank you so much. This is great. Perhaps you can help this Jewish guy understand something going back to the bishop's letter. And can you parse out to what extent that was driven by American conservative politics in getting involved in the church versus the Vatican hierarchy coming down from them?
Okay, yeah, good question, good question. Here's the thing, is that under Pope John Paul II at the end of his tenure, and then Pope Benedict, many U.S. Leaders of the Catholic Church, cardinals, moved to Rome and became part of the Roman hierarchy, the Roman structure, the governing structure. And there were about, as I recall, 12 of them in Rome. And they were the fuel behind both the investigation and the censure. And they were trying several things. One, they were the other group. Well, let me just say this: the other group that was named in the censure is the Resource Center for Religious Institutes, and they are a group that gives religious congregations legal advice. And they got mentioned, like Network got mentioned, because the bishops were mad at them. Because when the bishops were trying to take some of the sisters' property to replenish the coffers after the sexual abuse judgments and that kind of thing, the Resource Center helped the sisters prevail. And so the sisters have prevailed in every lawsuit that's been brought against them, but at great expense, which has just been really hard. So that's why the two of us got named. So it was, while it came as a from the Roman structure, it was totally fueled by U.S. politics and U.S. approach.
I want to build on that just a sec here, because the sister and I appeared on a panel together in Charlotte, if you recall, and one of the other panelists was Kathleen Kennedy. And we were talking about the politics of the moment in the convention. And Kathleen recalled a time when she was driving with her father, Bobby Kennedy, way back when he was running for president. When Jack was running for president, I think. And she was complaining to her daddy about the fact that even then the cardinals and the bishops were opposing John F. Kennedy because he was a Catholic but was not maybe really a strict Catholic. And Bobby told Kathleen, you have to understand, the priests are Republicans, the nuns are Democrats.
True even then.
And she said she never forgot that. It's sort of true then and true today. But so do you have was there a risk, like you appeared spoke at the Democratic National Convention, was there a risk that the nuns might be branded as just being tools of the Democratic Party?
Right. Well, I write about it in my book, but what nobody knew at the time was that my community had a really hard time trying to decide if it was okay if I did it. And so our leadership was really frightened, and I ended up doing it anyway, but we had a real struggle about it.
And you tried to set up some events at the Republican convention.
Yeah, well, that was the thing, that we had tried to, we did workshops in Charlotte, and we tried to do it in Tampa. We could never get a call back from the Republican Party. We couldn't make any headway at all. We tried to get a place where we could set up alongside the Republican Party, but we couldn't, because they had a much larger safety perimeter around it, that we couldn't get close. We ended up not being able to do it. So we did try. I would have been happy to give the same talk at the Republican convention. I would have gotten a different reception, but I would have given the same talk because it's a story. It's a story.
I was going to ask a related question. It would seem like before the polarization of the current extreme polarization, that it would have been easier to be bipartisan, that you would have found Republicans who were really supporting you, and that must be more and more difficult with the polarization, so you would be perceived more and more
Right, that's a really good point. I do call myself an equal opportunity annoyer. I'll annoy Democrats, but I really annoy Republicans. There are Republicans who had been very good partners with us. Senator Bond was when he was in the Senate, was really good at, especially on Iraqi refugee issues that we were working on. And I was trying to get economic development in Iraq as a peace-building mechanism, and he was really a champion of that. Right now in the House, we've got some really good Republicans we're working closely with. Congressman Diaz-Balart from Florida, Jeff Denham from California on immigration reform. There's some really good people who are doing good work on that issue. And I urge everyone, I know we've lost the vote if you live in D.C., but call your, I've actually stayed registered in California because I hate losing my vote, but call any of your friends and get them to call their congressional representative and get them to put pressure on Boehner to bring this immigration to the floor. We've got the votes. It's being held up by 35 Tea Party people right now, which is just annoying me no end. So there are some opportunities for crossing party lines. It's much harder than it was when I first came. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Over there?
Good point.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for this. My question is, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and as a young adult, much of my ties to it still is my mother, who's a Democratic woman who devotes all of her time to the parish and our sister parish, and truly working within the Catholic faith. And my question is, what advice do you have, you touched upon it a bit at the end, what advice do you have to these women who, again, dedicate their lives to the Catholic social teaching and believe in all of these missions, but get so frustrated by the tradition that they're in, despite believing wholeheartedly in the faith of it? But again, just get beat down by not having a voice or not seeing a future.
Amen. It is anguish. And in the poem, there's this piece about folks so hungry, so malnourished. Our leadership has failed most people, which is anguish to me. And one of the joys on the bus is being able to touch and hold and encourage these fabulous, valiant people. The other piece is I really do believe the Spirit leads us to action. And if we listen deeply to the pain of the world, to the needs of the world, and act on what we hear, it comes clear. It may take time. I'm not patient. I am not patient. And so it's very hard for me. So when I'm listening deeply, I say, hurry up, speak up, do it faster. But it really is anguish. And to be connected in community. The only way that we'll move forward is connected with each other, because no one of us can carry this alone. No one of us. But one of the joys for me on the bus is that we discovered the bus connects, the NUNS connects with the group called the NONES, the nuns, the ones who have no denominational affiliation. But what we've discovered is that we come together because it's welcoming, it's value-based, all are treasured, and we know we have to do something for community. And so those are things that are nourishing for us. And one of the reasons I wrote the book was trying to be nourishment for your mom and for you and for anybody else. Give your mom a hug for me. That's great that she's doing that. Good.
You know, related to that, one of the things you talk about in the book is that you sort of woke up this sleeping giant around the country of all these nuns in these parishes and these convents who were so excited, you know, and you gave them an opportunity to stand up and be counted. Right?
What a surprise. What a surprise. I really thought we'd worked for 50 years on renewal and making a difference after our Vatican II, which is the renewal time in the church. And we just worked hard. And I thought no one saw us. But then it was like, boop, lightning. It was fabulous. But
everywhere you went, the nuns turned out.
The nuns turned out, and a whole bunch of others. The very first night in Des Moines on the bus, June 17th, we were at Holy Trinity Parish, and then afterwards, people came up to me, and there was the Presbyterian delegation, and the Lutherans, and the Buddhist. Who knew there was a Buddhist temple in Des Moines? And people had come from Sioux Falls and Omaha, and I mean, we had 350, 400 people. It was amazing. It was amazing. But the hunger, and then we had all the Catholic sisters that organized the thing, and we're all getting old, and for the most part, and so it's like, what an amazing opportunity to live mission in such a visible way. I mean, it's a gift. It is a gift.
Yes. And then up here, too. Mm-hmm.
First, you're doing wonderful work.
Thank you.
My question is, I want to know what you read, and what you read day to day to stay plugged into politics, but also what you read for yourself, what recreation reading.
Oh, okay. What do I read? What a great question. I have to confess, trash mysteries. I just got a new Camilleri, Andres Camilleri.
Oh,
Anybody
he's
know him?
Fabulous. I
Fabulous.
discovered him last summer, or last fall, in Sicily. Carol and I
Yes.
were in
He has a Sicilian detective.
Camilleri. Montalbano is his detective.
Montalbano.
There's a TV
bene.
series, Montalbano,
is there?
the TV series.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's a new book out, so I just got that.
Yeah.
For nourishment, okay, here in the morning, I do a half-hour meditation, and then I do a bit of reading. And so currently, what am I currently reading? What's his name? He gave me his book, and I can't remember his name. Without Buddha, I Can't Be Christian. It's a wonderful book. It's really great. And he gave it to me, and he signed it, and his name is, he taught at Union Theological. He's now retired in Madison, Wisconsin. Anyway, I've lost his name.
Without Buddha, I Can't Be Christian?
Yeah.
I'll give it to you.
Oh,
All right.
okay.
We're looking it up. Okay, good.
Paul Knitter. And I could see him. He has a really nice beard. Anyway, so that I've been mulling. And then there's a wonderful series put out by this Irish Jesuits, I think, which takes the scripture for each day during the year and does a little justice reflection on it. So that's kind of some of it.
Do you read the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal
yeah,
and Huffington Post and all of those?
Oh, yeah,
every day?
and I have an op-ed in The Hill tomorrow morning in the print edition, so go get it. And all of those, CQ, Quarterly, and Politico, and I don't know, actually, funny, I didn't think about that as reading. That's work. That's work.
That's a different kind of reading.
A different kind of reading.
Again, Andrea Camilleri. Check him out. I'm a big fan, too. That's so great.
Sister, I wanted to tell you a story. I was wearing my Nuns on the Bus shirt a couple of summers ago, and I kind of forgot I had it on, and we went to Mass on Saturday evening at St. Joseph's Church in the Toledo Diocese. And, I'm a little bit nervous, but I'm up, heading up in the line, and so I get to the priest, and he says, Body of Christ, and I say, Amen, and he says, nice shirt.
I love it. That's great. That is good.
I'm glad he didn't refuse you communion. That's what I was waiting for. Same here. Right here in the front.
Neighborhood privilege.
I'm wondering about the Republican strategy now that's going to focus on poverty in this election. Is that stealing your issue, or do you think it's a great thing that they're finally seeing the truth?
Well, I met with Paul Ryan and about that a couple weeks ago, and he said that some Democrats were giving him a really bad time for even saying the word poverty because it was their issue. And that what I realized is we really need a serious conversation about income and wealth disparity in our nation, and we need both sides or all three sides talking about it. And so the problem is Pope Francis has this thing in the thing he put out last November where he says reality is more important than theories. Reality is more important than theories. And what Paul Ryan has is a bunch of theories in his head. But what we need is the realities of stories of people on the ground and the people who really know the lived reality of poverty. And that's where they miss the boat. They make all these statements. I'm going to do a panel for the American Bar Association, God help me. And I was just on the phone call, and these people were saying all of these prejudicial things against people in poverty, like, oh, really it's an issue of, they just need to be incentivized to work. And, and I'm trying to say it's an issue of wages, it's an issue of opportunity, we need more jobs, we need jobs that pay, we need housing, anyway, it should be a very interesting 2 hours, but anyway. But so I'm in some ways grateful, but in other ways worried, because it gives them a platform for, as I say, unencumbered by data. They will say the damnedest things. So, but to try to, at least they're talking about the topic, which is a step. But we've got to keep them facing the faces of real people. That's the challenge. That's what we're going to try to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Didn't see it.
This is my friend circle.
Speaking of that, you have some wonderful stories in the book about the real people that you met. And I wondered if you'd share one of those about Margaret or one of the others.
Oh, great. Thank you, Maureen. I think I can do... No. You need something else. I need this. Okay. 2 stories, okay?
Sure.
Chief?
Hey, you're in charge.
Right. Yeah. Let's see. Well, after the bus trip, I was coming back from filming Bill Moyers. I've had the most amazing experiences. I was coming back from filming Bill Moyers, and I was in the quiet car on the train. And the conductor takes my ticket, and she goes, oh! Looks at the ticket, looks at me, looks at the ticket, looks at me, and goes really loud, "You're one of the nuns on the bus, and you're on my train." So, and I'm trying to be quiet and incognito. And then before we got to D.C., she brought me this little chit, and she said, asked me to put it in my prayer book. Well, I don't carry a prayer book. I carry a Bible. And so I put it in my Bible, and I looked at it later, and it has her name, and that she was the conductor of the Amtrak train 2165, and asking me to pray for special intentions. And so when I was leaving the train, I said I'd put it in my Bible, and she says, "Oh, thank you, thank you." And as I'm walking into Union Station, she calls out after me saying, "Keep it up. We need you. We need you." I was like, whoa, I felt overwhelmed. But then what I've done is I told that story a few times, and then I got other people giving me all kinds of treasures. So I carry all these people in my Bible now, and with these stories. But the story is that I'll share, and there's tons of them, so someday we could just do stories from the Bible or something. But
Next book.
Yeah, good idea. Is the story of Margaret, and this is Margaret. Margaret is the woman I talked about, one of the women I talked about at the DNC. She lost her job in the 2007 recession. When she lost her job, she lost her health care. And when she lost her health care, she lost her capacity to get screening for colon cancer, even though her family had a genetic predisposition to colon cancer. And she ended up getting colon cancer. Now, her family tells me that she was really stubborn also, and quite an activist organizer. She'd been the shop steward. She'd done a lot of feisty stuff. And so her sister and her sister's partner, Jeannie and Lynn, brought me her picture when we were on the bus in Cincinnati, direct from her memorial service, because they thought Margaret would want to be at the bus. And the thing that Margaret's story has done for me is that her untimely death at 56 fuels my passion to ensure that Medicaid is expanded in every state as part of the Affordable Care Act. Because if Medicaid is expanded, then no more Margarets need die. They would get the care. And it is wrong that people would lose health care just because they lost their job. We as a nation are better than that. So, but here's the other part of it. So I tell the story about Margaret, and Margaret fuels my passion for Medicaid expansion. And then I got to see Jeannie and Lynn up in Madison, Wisconsin, where they live, because I was giving a talk up there, and they told me that my talking about Margaret had provided healing for their family, because they had all felt so guilty that Margaret had died. They didn't know how sick she was. They didn't understand. And so they were feeling so guilty. But my talking about her then kind of gave some meaning to a senseless death. And so they felt healed, and I feel nourished. And that's community. It's beautiful. It's fabulous.
I think we all feel very much more nourished tonight after hearing Sister Simone Campbell. A book to enjoy and a book to buy, first of all. And Sister will be glad to be in the gallery next door signing books. And thank you again all tonight for coming. And Sister, thank you so much.
Can I just say that the proceeds, the royalties that we get, go to my religious community, and part of the money goes to Network, our organization. So it's, for me, if you buy a book, it's a big help for all of us. Thank you.